Okay, people. So now we're going in. I got a few minutes on this camera. Now we're going into the 26th of December 2017. It is like almost 1:30 in the morning. And I'm still here. Right? I'm so tired, people. You can't imagine how tired I am. But as I sit here and I do this stuff, you know, like I said, it is so much hypocrisy around it in terms of what they're trying to suggest in terms of how they protect people. But then, in reality, you know, all you have to do is look at people like my daughter who are sexually exploited on the streets through the underground economy within the black market of prostitution. And then, of course, there's those drug sales, right? Because she's an addict. And it's not uncommon anymore, people, it's a very prolific problem in our community, just as you're finding, like, these needles, like, everywhere you fucking go. Like, seriously, you only have to walk down from my house 2 blocks, not even 2 blocks, to the corner store, and you're going to find them all the way there and all the way back. And then if you go that way, you're going to find them over there. And if you go over there, you're going to find them over there. Because it's just, these people are not getting help. Right? And, you know, they're subject to abuse, you know, rape, murder, torture. Not to mention the suffering that they're going through while they struggle with their addiction, which brings them to a state of deterioration. Now, I was on the computer the other day, well, I guess yesterday or something like that, because I'm trying to understand myself the draw, I don't know, the entrapment, I guess you can say, with heroin addiction, right? I'm trying to understand what the people themselves go through, because it is becoming a global epidemic. If you Google heroin addiction, I mean, it's like it's flooded the United States from one end of the country to the other end of the country. And it's starting to be like that here. But, you know, people don't equate that in part with all these immigrants that are coming into our countries, in terms of coming from India and China and places like that, where in those countries they have the same problem, where some areas within, this thing's flashing, they have up to 70% of the population addicted to heroin in some areas within certain parts of these countries, right? And really, people, we didn't really have this problem in terms of the heroin epidemic until the BC Liberal government came into power and invited Bill Clinton to come over and do his little speech. Even though he was a Democrat, he hooked up with a BC Liberal who, if you were to equate it to an American politician, more than likely would be like a Republican. Just like Bush will stand next to Clinton, right? Like, these guys are so fucking shady. So anyway, along in came the meth flood. You know, as soon as that meeting came about, within the year or two, a couple of years, all of a sudden, we all had these teenagers becoming like little 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds were targeted through the school systems, and they became addicted to meth. And then eventually what happens is meth goes into heroin, because the next drug that came flooding into the community after the meth epidemic hit the community in British Columbia, Canada, was heroin. And nobody seems to go to jail for that, people. You never hear of any major drug busts to shut down these traffickers of these drugs, which are dangerous substances, which would fall under, I don't have it on me right now, but it's all police related and Dangerous Substance Act and all this other shit, right? That, you know, again, is another one of those laws and statutes and regulations and blah 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 that just goes around in one big fucking circle and just is a bunch of rhetoric, because the number of lives that are being ruined for this gang activity that is running slave trades within Canada. Like, that's how I feel, people. I feel that, you know, with this, I don't know, maybe it's directly related to the UN agenda, or it's just a union thing in terms of, you know, keeping that wealth for themselves and, you know, want to be high on the horse in terms of authority and keep their thumb on people. And because, you know, no matter how hard you try, sometimes you're never going to get anywhere in life because they don't want you to succeed, people. Like, you know, who wouldn't want a universal school meal program for the children in their province? Well, I can tell you, under the BC Liberal government, the union didn't want it. Nope. And none of these municipal city councils and that type of thing, they didn't want it either. They're more interested in keeping the status quo when it comes to the poverty level that's in the community, in addition to, you know, pandering to the wealthier residents in the community in terms of letting them get away with their grow ops and you know, and flooding the community with their methamphetamine and flooding the community with the heroin and, you know, and creating more junkie prostitutes, I guess you can say, because they're sure in the hell not high-end prostitutes. I mean, some of these girls got it pretty freaking rough out there, people. And anyone within a position of power just don't seem to give a shit. As a matter of fact, it seems like they want these people out there. Because under these acts, people like my daughter would qualify to be rescued and protected within the healthcare system from all the crap that goes out on the city streets because of corruption, not within the community that's homeless. They are the easy pickings. They are the easy target. They are the, in essence, the slaves within the slave trade. Okay? Right? Because again, there is no major bust going on with this shipload of heroin that's flooding our communities and destroying lives as old people are being targeted for their houses and committed in the thousands into institutions, aka little mini prisons, right? To prop up the healthcare system so that those union workers can guarantee their pension plans and all this other crap. Like, I don't know what kind of world we live in anymore. I don't. It's not a safe world. It's not a safe world for children to grow up anymore. It's not a safe world for the elderly to live their lives in peace. Because, again, even though the family, the dad, the mom, whatever, leave enduring power of attorney to their son, to their daughter, trust me, people, it doesn't take much to remove that family member off the agenda list. In terms of, if those people have money and somebody wants that money, they're going to get that money. Just like that story with the paramedic, right? His wife got sick or something. He took her to the hospital, because that's what people do. Next thing you know it, hospitals started accusing him, and he was a paramedic, of abusing his wife. Because I guess he couldn't afford immediately $3,000 for a special bed that they said that she needed. And because of that, that was the excuse to accuse him of abusing his wife at the same center that my dad was at, the Yale Road Center in Surrey, BC, British Columbia, Canada. And then they prevented him from going in and seeing her as they closed the bank accounts, took him over, I guess in this case through the public guardian and trustee, and then locked him out of his house, people, because the house went up for sale. All right, because that's the agenda. Kill off the young with the drugs, force them out into the streets, run them ragged with no health care until they finally eventually die. Feed off of that negative energy because for some reason it makes you feel empowered to see other people suffer, right? As you put your other eyeball on all the houses in the community, the old bungalows that are owned by the majority of elderly that are now being targeted within our hospital systems, which is another form of genocide, people, within the country of Canada. Because it's not just a BC problem. Because what I read and what I've been looking at is a political problem. It has nothing to do with health care. And that's why I'm back at talking to the camera, to remind people that it has nothing to do with health care. Because if it had something to do with health care, my daughter would not be having seizures and convulsions on a regular basis, right? To which she is having. My daughter would not be deteriorating to the point where she's on the brink of death because her family is incapable of helping her with that molding that the healthcare system has brought her to. In other words, it was the healthcare system that molded her to be to who she is today. It is, people, because they haven't given her the proper health care. When you have an addict that goes to the hospital for a blood transfusion because she's bleeding out and she you know, her white blood count cell is so low that she's on the brink of death, okay? And then they find her on the streets or whatever. They scrape her up off the ground and they whisk her off to the hospital. But apparently they've got some little hideout now in New Westminster that nobody really knows. It's just, they're not taking them now to the hospital. They're taking them to some other processing plant. If it's not a hospital, where are they taking them? I haven't had time to really go out in the street and talk to the people about it, but somebody's already mentioned it to me that when this ambulance, which is a special ambulance, comes to pick up all these sick people up by the homeless shelter, they're not taking them to the hospital. They're taking them somewhere else in New Westminster. God knows where. Nobody really knows. Okay? So anyway, assuming that they're taking my daughter to the hospital, and then they give her a blood transfusion, right, so she doesn't die, as if it's really helping her. They don't give her methadone. They won't give her script. They release her, knowing that she's going to go be the addict that she is. To keep that cycle of prostitution going, to keep that cycle of deterioration going, to keep that cycle of just anarchy going within the human spirit, right? It's like we're dealing with the Antichrist here. Maybe that's what we're dealing with, people. We're dealing with the Antichrist, right? And they're using public services to really stick it to people. Because, I'm 55 years old. And, you know, I've lived a fairly interesting life. And if I look back from now, 20 years, 30 years, even 40 years, I'm telling you, people, children are not safe anymore in terms of having the right to be in their home with their families without strangers trying to destroy that for compliance purposes in order to break the family spirit. Right? Only some families can prosper, where other families are used as an example to break that spirit, and they go after the most vulnerable, whether it's the children or in this new age and improved of, a form of slavery is now the adults, which has probably been going on for a long time. It's just that maybe I didn't notice it because it didn't affect me personally, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't been going on, because it obviously has been going on. Right? And it's really sad because it makes you not want to live. In the context of, if you're not free and safe and you're subject to be attacked and abused because you're an easy target for that, then it becomes hard to like life, right? And when you think about it in terms of the numbers of people in today's time committing suicide because they're feeling like there is no hope, and the numbers are high, people, right across the continent, then what does that tell you about our public servants? If our public servants are failing in their job descriptions to the point where the public is killing itself off to avoid what's coming from these people from different directions, because it doesn't come from just one, then when are people going to realize that our public institutions are corrupt and start doing something about it? Right? I don't know. I just know that what I'm having to go through and then be mocked for my effort, right? It's really hard sitting here doing this, knowing that when I get back into a court setting, there is a high probability. It's not a guarantee, but there is a high probability where I will be played for a fool, made to look like a fool, will be ignored, will be shuffled under the paperwork and ignored in terms of, oh, I didn't see that, right? Even though they did. And then have to figure out how to start all over again, knowing that you're going to come up against the same auction block, because it's a form of slavery, people. Okay? Slavery comes in different ways. It doesn't have to be up in freaking Siberia or someplace like that with, people all rounded up in chains and sold off to the highest bidder so they can go be beat in some hut, right? Slavery does not have to be just reduced down to that, okay? Uncle John got caught up in that slave trade of the elderly. It's a form of trafficking of human beings, just like my daughter is being trafficked on the streets. Both of them were failed by the healthcare system. Right? What is the healthcare system going to say to me when my daughter dies out there? Or dies in my garage, or wherever she is? What are they going to say? It was her choice to leave the premises? Well, if it was her choice to leave the premises, why wasn't it John's choice to leave the premises? Right? What was the difference between John and my daughter? My daughter sits there and picks at her head until she has scabs all over the place because she's deteriorating so bad. My daughter will have seizures because she's deteriorating so bad. So why isn't Fraser Health doing something about that since she's deteriorating so bad? Because she has no money, people. And what is the common denominator when anything relates to a slave? It creates an income. It doesn't matter if you're picking cotton or if you're trafficking children through Children's Aid Society, where you have 10,000 strong every year to prop up a $3.2 billion cash infusion so that all those employees get to continue to keep working. Or if it's the prison industry where, whether it's privatized or not, right, there's that cash infusion to keep those people employed while millions, especially in the States, suffer at that expense, which is another form of slavery, right? Or now it's the elderly because of the big boom that's coming in. 10,000 people illegally detained in the province of British Columbia, Canada. It was just so happened as I went to go post up on my Facebook page my last video, which was, I can't even remember the title anymore, I'm so tired. And what popped up? Oh, that article that I was talking about where there's 10,000 people who have been determined to be illegally detained in this province against their will and forced to take medications and shock therapy and anything else that this so-called public health care system wants to dole out to them. If that's not slavery, I don't know what is. Because for every one person out of those 10,000 people, there is a budget around that, a fiscal budget. And it's probably in the billions. Just like a lot of those unnecessary tests and operations that the healthcare system likes to do billing in terms of, oh, well, we had to give him a brain scan. Oh, well, we had to operate on her and take out her appendix. Really? And then when you took it out, you said it wasn't necessary, but yet you billed the provincial government to take out her appendix, which pushed her back into drug addiction. That ruined her chances of getting better and, getting into gainful employment and becoming a productive member in society. It's more profitable to keep her out on the streets, hooked on heroin and being, abused by whoever for whatever reason than it is to actually follow through on your job descriptions. So it's not a very healthy society that we live in. And it's getting to the point where nobody is safe. Except for the lizard people. Seriously. Because these gotta be lizard people. These people have gotta be cloaked with, some sort of technology that hides their true identity in terms of what they really look like. It's just a mirage. These are not real people that we're dealing with, because I can't see this many people being so corrupt for a measly dollar bill. I just can't see it, people. There's something else that's fueling this. Unless, of course, it's the superannuation life insurance policies and those pension plans and, you know, those dental plans. And we do know that the government is busted and broke, and they're looking for every dollar they can find to prop up that fucking system, right? Because, again, you know, people are coming in and they want their pensions, right? So they got to get those dollars from somewhere. So that's a lot of corruption. How are you supposed to, you know, fight against that when nobody wants to hear it because they're waiting for their pension plan? Right? Judge has money coming out of every orifice in his body, but he's still waiting for his pension plan. So he's going to make sure there's enough money in that coffer in the next government, whatever government comes in, so that when he retires, even though he's got a fucking $3 million sitting in the bank, he still wants his pension plan. So he's got to keep that money train going. So he's not going to listen to somebody like me because I'm too easy to blow off. You know, I'm not accredited, right? I didn't go to law school, right? I don't got a big team behind me, right? You know, it's easy to slander me, right? So anyway, I just wanted to say that.